You're listening to Midnight Confessions. The following story was told by a man named Tyler who grew up in Greenville, South Carolina. He stated this happened when he was 10 years old in the summer of 2016, right before the clown sightings started spreading across the country. This is his confession. It was late August of 2016, the kind of night in South Carolina where the air sticks to your skin and even the breeze feels warm. The grown-ups were inside with the air conditioning blasting, but all of us kids were outside after dinner, riding bikes, tossing a football, just trying to burn off that last minute of daylight. I'll never forget that place. Our apartment complex was called Fleetwood Manor, and behind it, a little ways past the playground, there was a big open field where the older kids usually hung out after dinner. Now, in order for you to get an understanding of this next part, you'll need to understand the layout a little bit better. Past the field was the start of the woods. There used to be an old chain link fence there, but over the years it had fallen apart. The spots where the gates once were had been broken for so long that instead of fixing them, the property just decided to remove the fence altogether and not install a new one, probably because they were too cheap to. Beyond that fence line, the woods stretched out, a narrow strip of trees that led down to the shallow creek. Our parents always told us not to mess around back there, especially after dark. You know, for obvious reasons. Snakes, ticks, or worse. But when you're 10 years old, that kind of warning just makes it sound like an adventure. So of course we would push those boundaries of getting close. That evening, just as the sun was setting, my buddy Evan dared me to run up and touch one of the trees at the edge of the woods. Not wanting to be labeled a scaredy cat, I sprinted across the grass, smacked the bark, turned to run back, and that's when I heard something. A voice coming from just inside of the woods saying, "Hey kid, come here." It was quiet but clear. It was definitely a man's voice, not another kid's or a teenager. I froze. Evan yelled for me to hurry up. But before I could move, the voice came again, louder this time. "Hey buddy, is this your ball?" I looked toward the trees, and that's when I saw him. He was holding a red ball that looked weathered and worn. A heavier set man dressed as a clown, like literally in a full clown costume. White face, bright red hair, a yellow clown suit with big red buttons that caught the porch lights from the building. For a second, I honestly thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. It was August, nowhere near Halloween, and it was still like 80-something degrees outside even after sunset. Who the hell dresses in a full clown costume in South Carolina heat? The makeup alone should have melted off his face. He didn't move, just stood there staring at me. Then he lifted a gloved hand and crooked his finger, motioning for me to come closer. My stomach flipped. Every hair on my neck and arm stood up. I bolted so fast my flip-flops flew off in the grass. When I reached Evan, he said he heard laughing. Not a normal laugh, more like someone trying to hold it in. We ran straight home. My mom didn't believe me until later that night. She went out to toss out the trash in the dumpster and came back pale as a ghost, saying she heard whistling coming from the woods, like somebody was watching her and wanted to get her attention. The next morning, police cars were parked all around the playground. An officer told my mom someone had called about a man in a clown suit trying to lure kids toward the trees. They found large footprints in the mud, a makeshift camp down by the creek, and you could tell someone had a fire. They also found empty beer cans, and a rusty knife was recovered. For weeks after that, none of us were allowed outside once the streetlights came on. The woods stayed quiet, but not empty. You could still feel like you were being watched when you walked by. I'm 24 years old now, still living in South Carolina, Every so often, I drive past Fleetwood Manor. The apartments look smaller. Most of the woods have been cleared out, but every time I glance that way, I swear I catch a flash of yellow between the trees. This next story comes from a man named Ryan, a 27-year-old delivery driver from Bardstown, Kentucky. He stated this happened in September of 2016, right in the middle of the nationwide clown sighting panic. This is his confession. I worked night shifts. Back then in 2016, I was driving overnight for a small parts delivery company out of Bardstown, Kentucky. Quiet town, surrounded by endless cornfields and back roads that all look the same when the sun goes down. It was a little after 2 a.m. when this happened. I had just finished my last drop off in a town called Bloomfield and was headed back home. The road I took, Highway 245, cuts through about 10 miles of farmland with nothing but the occasional mailbox and a few flickering yard lights. I remember having the windows cracked because the night was still warm. Early September in Kentucky. The air smelled like wet grass and diesel. My high beams were on, cutting through the fog that hangs low over the fields this time of year. About 2 miles out, something caught the edge of my lights on the right side of the road. At first I thought it was a deer, just a pale shape standing by the ditch. But when I got closer, I realized it wasn't an animal. It was a person dressed in a clown suit. But he wasn't facing me, he wasn't facing the road, he was facing the cornfield with his back to the road. He had on white makeup, red hair, baggy yellow outfit, just standing there completely still. I slowed down to maybe like 20 miles an hour, trying to figure out what I was looking at. My brain was saying prank, Halloween, drunk guy, something that made sense. But it was on a desolate road in the middle of the night, and who the hell stands on the side of the road in a full clown suit at 2 in the morning? I rolled past slow enough that my headlights hit him full on. That's when he turned his head, not his body, just his head, and looked straight at me. His face was completely blank. No smile, no frown, just staring. I don't know why, but I eased off the gas like an idiot, trying to process it. Then, I swear to you, he started running, full sprint, straight toward my truck. I floored it. Tires spun, gravel everywhere, engine screaming. In my side mirror, the headlights caught the flashes of white and red bouncing in the dark before the road curved and he disappeared behind me. I didn't stop until I hit the next gas station, one of those all-night places with flickering lights and a single clerk who looks half asleep. I went inside shaking, grabbed a water, and told the guy at the counter what I saw. He just stared at me for a second and said, "You're not the first one tonight." Turned out 2 other drivers had called Nelson County Sheriff's Office earlier, said a clown was walking along 245 waving at cars. The cops searched that stretch for hours, but never found anyone. I still drive that road sometimes for work, and every time I pass that cornfield, I can't help but glance at that tree line, half expecting to see that white face turn toward me again. This final story takes us to Lancaster, Pennsylvania in October of 2016, just weeks before Halloween. It follows a 21-year-old college student named Rachel who was staying home alone while her roommates were away for the weekend. This is her story. It was late October in Lancaster, the kind of cool, damp evening where the air smells like rain and fallen leaves. Rachel had the house to herself that weekend. Her 2 roommates had gone home for fall break, and she stayed behind to finish an online midterm and catch up on laundry. The small off-campus rental sat on the edge of a wooden ravine. From the back porch, you could see the tree line stretching down to a narrow creek. The basement had small rectangular windows that sat level with the ground, one of which faced the woods. Around 11:45 p.m., Rachel paused her movie when she thought she heard something outside. 3 dull taps coming from downstairs. She quickly muted the TV. The sound came again. At first, she thought it might be a tree branch in the wind, but it was too rhythmic, too deliberate. She grabbed her phone flashlight and crept halfway down the basement stairs, the light barely reaching the far corner where the window was. For a second, she didn't see anything, and then she noticed a shape crouched just beyond the glass. White face, red hair, a clown. The clown was crouched low, one hand pressed against the glass, its head tilted slightly to the side. The reflection from her phone caught the pale makeup, and for a split second, the eyes seemed to flicker toward her. Rachel froze. Her first thought was it had to be one of her friends. A prank, but when she whispered hello, the clown didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. Then it shifted closer. The sound of latex dragging against the glass made her stomach twist. She turned and bolted upstairs, slammed the basement door, and locked it. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely dial 911. When officers arrived only 10 minutes later, the yard was empty. They searched the woods behind the house, and they did find footprints leading from the creek directly up to the basement window. The print stopped halfway back down the slope, as if the person had vanished into the water. No suspects were ever found. Rachel moved out 2 weeks later, transferring to a new campus apartment across town. She told police she started sleeping with the lights on for months afterward. She says every time it rains at night, she still hears those 3 taps on the glass. That was Rachel's story from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, one of the final documented sightings from the 2016 clown panic. If you've got a true story of your own, send it to midnightconfessyt@gmail.com, and I'll see you after midnight.